Greetings, dear friends. Welcome to this Empty Cloud Monastery live stream. Topic today is the topic of emptiness. Before I say a few words on this topic, I'd like to pay homage to our teacher, the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So today I'll be speaking on this topic of emptiness in the Buddha's teachings, a very vast topic. Many different suttas, many different talks and discourses on this topic in the Pali Canon for us. And I'd like to maybe begin by speaking a little bit about the ways in which the Buddha encouraged us to practice in order to experience emptiness. Emptiness from what? Emptiness from complexity, emptiness from suffering, emptiness from the defilements. In this sense, emptiness as an absence of something, and noticing that absence and comparing the absence with the presence of various experiences. So there's a sutta, I put references in the chat to a number of suttas. There are many more, but a number of suttas on the topic of emptiness. And you can see the first one, Majjhima 121, Chula Sunyata Sutta. The Buddha gives a lot of advice here about how to cultivate peace, how to cultivate path. And the guidance is really one of simplifying, stepping away from complexity, stepping away from distraction, and enabling a sort of turning towards path and towards the results of the practice. And so here the Buddha speaks about, if we find ourselves in the midst of the crowds, in social situations, surrounded by people. Like yesterday, I was in London and with friends, and then walking around and just taking in the enormity of the human crowd, scene, and both present in the city in that moment by moment, but also, the history, all these vast edifices, historic buildings, how many people have been through this space, how many events have happened in these spaces. And so that experience of city and the experience of the sort of crowds, the human society all around us in such places. And the Buddha, of course, encouraged us to, in order to develop our meditation practice, to enable us to investigate the teachings, to incline away from the crowd, away from social scenes, to seek simplicity and solitude. So find seclusion, find quiet places, move toward more tranquil spaces where we can have the conditions that, enable us to be able to begin the journey of investigating the Dharma within. And the Buddha in this sutta, Chula Sutta, speaks about how we can notice when we are fortunate enough to find ourselves in a peaceful space. Notice the absence of the noise, the hustle, the bustle, the complexity of being surrounded by other human beings, and to see how that is. It's a form of emptiness. We're empty of that. We're free from the human kind of collective energy. And then, having enabled ourselves to be in a more peaceful, simple space, he encouraged a turning towards nature, to rest in the very natural flow of nature, the way things manifest the Dharma. Things arising because of causes, growing and developing, changing and decaying and passing away. And we can see this all around us in nature. There's not a lot of complexity, of distraction. We can simply observe this is the way things are. And so to enable emptiness of complexity, the simplicity of nature to inform us. And from this place to develop further, to allow ourselves to, in a way, cultivate even greater simplicity through recognizing the kind of building blocks of nature, the elements, the fundamental aspects of nature. So to contemplate earth, air, water, fire. And these are contemplations, if we really focus on the elements within the body, the concept of that element, the qualities of the different elements, we can again strip away a lot of complexity and notice the absence of that, and allow the mind to become still more peaceful, more focused, more still. And this quite naturally leads us into jhana practice. So to allow, the absence of distraction, allow the hindrances to be seen and to fall away. Desire, aversion, sleepiness or restlessness and doubt, these hindrances, these causes of proliferation, agitation in the mind. As we develop our meditation practice, don't we work with these distractions, and we find that we can see them subsiding through noticing them, patiently abiding with them, maybe applying remedies to them, and just see how they fall away. And then there's the emptiness from the hindrances, emptiness of the peace that follows when we've been able to let go of the hindrances. And so the jhana, these first four jhanas, there's some still abiding in the realm of form, but all we're really aware of as we continue to practice letting go is happiness, bliss, peace, equanimity. And we can go still further in our pursuit of emptiness, in the path of practice, in our meditation, to develop the formless jhana, where all that exists for us is infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, neither perception nor non-perception. These are all states of mind that we can experience through meditation practice. They're not essential, but it's a movement away from complexity toward ever greater simplicity, ever more subtle understanding of the way things are. And it's really interesting in this sutta, the Chula Sunyata Sutta, that the Buddha really gives this whole path of practice, meditation practice and development. And then he comes back to saying that actually the real emptiness, the real abiding in emptiness, in voidness, in the signless, is to abide free from the defilements. It's not to be immersed in samadhi, it's to be present, but free from greed, free from hatred, desire, aversion, free from ignorance. And this is the abiding that the Buddha speaks about in various places, in various discourses and conversations, as his own abiding, where he would find himself, where he was, where his mind inclined, when there was no people around, there was no teaching happening, there was no training of the monastics going on, when he was alone or in peaceful places in nature, he would abide in the signless, the voidness. He would abide in emptiness, simply present, body, six senses, aware of the surroundings, but knowing the absence of desire, of aversion, of ignorance. No kind of relationship with reality, no reactivity around reality, simple, peaceful presence. And so this is the real emptiness the Buddha invited us to cultivate. And how do we cultivate that? It's not through actually dwelling in states of peace and bliss in our meditation practice, right? We can have times when we have a real, you could say, boost for our practice through peaceful abidings in meditation. But the point of meditation and cultivation of mindfulness, cultivation of stillness, is to be able to direct that very clear, bright mind to the sources of suffering, to root them out, to investigate the Dharma here deeply. Is there any desire at this moment? Is there any leaning away from the moment through aversion? Is there any confusion or delusion in the mind? And we want to keep investigating and taking great interest, in any manifestation of dis-ease here, any disharmony, any agitation here. That is our work, to be awake to that, and thereby to understand what's happening, to see the Four Noble Truths, to see suffering, to tease out, investigate what is the cause of this suffering. Why is there unease in the mind? What's happening here? Sometimes it's really obvious, isn't it? I'm just really wanting to be somewhere else or to have some particular thing. It's obvious, I know that. Sometimes it's more subtle. There's a vague sense of dis-ease, and we can investigate, we can apply our attention to find out what's actually going on. And often this, is an invitation to get still and turn away from the crowds, let the mind settle, to give ourselves the gift of seclusion and turn the attention inward, and to see, what's actually happening? What is this unease? How does it manifest in the body? And to scan the body, pay attention to every part of the body. What is the source of this unease? Because there'll always be a physical component that we can find, that we can bear with, we can attend to. We don't have to do anything to change it, but rather just to be willing to be present for any source of dis-ease in the body, which will be reflecting. There will be mental components to that we can also investigate. And so meditation, this call to meditation, is not a call actually to jhana practice per se, although this is a very useful, if we have the kind of mind that inclines towards stillness and enters into very focused, concentrated states of mind, that's wonderful and helpful. But the real emptiness is to be found in this willingness to be present for the body, to be present for the mind, to be open to the world, actually, and to see how we are impinged upon, to see how we react to the world around us, and therefore to see where the suffering arises. And so the Buddha's dwelling in voidness was actually, it wasn't a dwelling in samadhi in terms of jhana practice. It was a dwelling in presence, here and now, body and mind, and noting the absence of suffering, the absolute freedom from any kind of disturbance, the unshakable heart. And this is the encouragement for us to develop our understanding of emptiness in this way. And it's a process, of course, but we may all have had the experience of perhaps having a short fuse for some particular kind of situation or person, having a irritability towards certain things, and working with that patiently, trying not to react, trying not to say or do anything reactive, angry, hurtful as a result of our irritation, to pay attention to what's happening in the body. How does this irritation manifest? What's actually happening? The clenching, the tightening of the belly, perhaps the throat, the heat, maybe. However, this irritability feels for us, to really investigate deeply as it arises. And then slowly but surely, isn't it, with our practice over time, we can begin to release and let go of these habitual patterns, these reactivities, and see how, oh yes, the things that used to really annoy me now annoy me a little bit less. Actually, it's just a tinge of irritability now. I can actually observe those very same things now without getting hot. I'm actually not reacting anymore. And notice the absence of that defilement. Notice the freedom, notice the emptiness there. And so it's a process, like gradual process, noticing cessation, noticing freedom, noticing emptiness from. The Buddha also spoke about emptiness in a very specific way. I'd like to screen share with you a sutta, if I can remember how to. Yeah. Okay, I'll see if I can get this sutta up. So this is a very short teaching, and from Samyutta Nikaya 3585, and it's called Sunyata Loka Sutta, the world is empty. So here, Ananda is speaking to the Buddha. Venerable Ananda said to the Buddha, "Sir, they say that the world is empty. What does the saying, the world is empty, refer to? Sunyo loko. Sunyo, empty, loko, world." Ananda, they say that the world is empty because it's empty of self or what belongs to self. And what is empty of self or what belongs to self? The eye, sights, eye consciousness, and eye contact are empty of self or what belongs to self. The ear, sounds, ear consciousness, and ear contact also empty of self or what belongs to self. And the same for the nose and smells, the tongue and tastes, the body and touch, the mind and thoughts, the consciousnesses that arise at these six senses, the contact between the sense door and the object. In all these six senses, all of these aspects are empty of self or what belongs to self. And the pleasant, painful, or neutral feeling that arises, conditioned by mind contact, is also empty of self or what belongs to self. They say that the world is empty because it's empty of self or what belongs to self. So this is a really beautiful, amazing, and simple teaching, profound, but simply put. Pointing to emptiness as the emptiness of self. And this is one of the main ways in which in Theravada Buddhism we consider this meaning, the meaning of emptiness, the emptiness we want to experience, and the emptiness that is the true emptiness is this emptiness of self, of making me, making mine. And so we can consider, friends, that, you can't really have a problem if there's not a sense of self. You can't really suffer without a sense of self. There's no arising of defilements, of wanting, not wanting, confusion, without also the sense of self coming in. They go together. They are almost inextricably connected when it comes to our predicament. And so to focus the attention on letting go of the sense of self or ownership, control, investment in any of our own, what we consider to be our experiences, to let go of that tinge of ignorance that creates this selfing, is to be free from suffering. So it's a way in which we can investigate the Dharma. It's a lens through which we can gaze that will give us the opportunity to let go of suffering and to pursue path toward freedom, path toward emptiness from suffering. And so this way of investigating is so valuable, so helpful. And of course, anatta, anicca, and dukkha are the three characteristics of reality that aid and abet one another as concepts to help us to investigate for freedom. Not self, nothing permanent, nothing lasting, nothing satisfactory, nothing perfect here, nothing to rely upon here, nothing to hold to for a sense of well-being or happiness or safety. And so when we consider not only impersonal, that all conditions, all experiences are impersonal, but also impermanent, imperfect. If you put these three together, this is a very helpful way to really investigate and practice. Because sometimes we may be immersed in a sense of self, but we might not be able to quite see that That is what's happening for us. But wherever there's suffering, there will be a sense of self. It's just not always obvious to us. And so to try to investigate and let go of self, we may find that we're not succeeding so well. But if we then bring in, remember, dukkha, anicca, see the change, see the imperfection here, see the insecure nature of this experience, then this can often help us to begin to let go. I can see my body as myself, my life as mine. You know, it's a very deep rooted way of relating to this human experience, right? So it's difficult for me to just let go when I am invited to accept the teaching that there is no self. It really does feel like this is mine and I'm here, you know, there's a me here. But if we consider change, even looking back 10 years, never mind yesterday, looking back to childhood, looking back or looking forward to old age and the inevitability of death. These kind of reflections on change can help us to realize that, well, surely, you know, if I hold to this as me and mine, if I make this my world, then the whole world is lost at some point. The whole world is decaying. The whole world is changing. And what changes is insecure by its very nature. It's insubstantial. It's fleeting. Can I really rest in that? Can I really rely upon that? Is this something to make into my world? No, of course not. So these characteristics can all work together, and what they're really pointing to, anicca, anatta, dukkha, change, not self, suffering, unsatisfactoriness, they're all pointing us toward emptiness, toward the letting go, toward the opening into the absence of suffering. How does one describe that? Perhaps we don't need to describe that. We simply want to focus our attention on the letting go and the opening to that which is free from greed, hatred, and delusion. So there are, as I say, many teachings on emptiness, and there is also more in the Mahayana tradition, but also in Theravada understanding, the wider sense of emptiness that is the truth of all that is. So when the Buddha became the Buddha, you know, his realization was the end of greed, hatred, and delusion, and he dwelt in the emptiness from suffering for many weeks after he became the Buddha. And his mind then inclined toward, in a way, that emptiness within, the peace within, the absolute non-reactivity, the absolute unshakability, the equanimity. He turned that and looked around at the world because he began to investigate the causes, not just of the suffering here, but of all of this samsara, where we find ourselves. And he came to the understanding of dependent arising, codependent arising, or dependent origination. So this broader understanding of the essential emptiness in all things, seeing that there's nothing that exists without a cause. It exists and arises dependent on something else. So there's like a matrix or a web of all things, where everything is interrelating to everything else. And so the Buddha formulated this for us into the 12 links of dependent origination. And most importantly, he formulated it in such a way that we can use this teaching in order to practice for liberation. So recognizing that the root of all suffering is ignorance, it's not seeing clearly. And through ignorance, through this lack of clarity, this confusion, this distortion in a way of view, so consciousness is manifesting and creating, proliferating, creating sankhara, mental formations. And these mental formations, it's like a flow, a karmic flow, a momentum, compulsion, because there is this mental compulsion, so creation of form takes place, embodiment, rebirth, life after life. And this form is imbued with 6 senses. Because there's rebirth, there are the 6 senses. And because we have eyes, ears, we can smell, taste, touch, and think, so there's contact with the outside world. So there's a sense of inside and outside, and the contact between the two. And this results in feeling. There's an impingement here, and that impingement results in liking and disliking, desire and aversion. And the desire and aversion have their momentum and create still more holding to, pushing away, the compulsion to have this relationship with the world where we're trying to carve out for ourselves a comfortable abiding, but within samsara. How impossible, how fruitless, how painful, and how disappointing, how disillusioning. But this is what we do. So we develop more and more craving, clinging, holding to, reifying, and so birth and rebirth continue. And what does birth result in? Old age, sickness, death. And then this unfinished business, this consciousness that is not seeing clearly, not letting go, but holding and making and imagining, will continue and take form again and take rebirth again. And so in this way, the Buddha formulated this reality of the interconnectedness of all things from a perspective of the individual, the being who comes and goes and who has this experience within samsara. So there's so much here. I can hardly I can only touch on this profound teaching, but we can see how to make it useful. And in this way, we need to make it simple enough for ourselves that we can use this understanding for practice. So to see where we are, here we are. Here we are. We have this body, we have this mind, we have 6 senses, and we are noticing how some experiences bring up a sense of wanting, pleasant, I want it, I want more. We can notice how experiences that give a feeling that is unpleasant for us, very quickly we want to incline away from that experience. So we are reacting all the time to our experiences. And so the opportunity then is there for us to see what's happening, to feel out what's happening, and to be willing to step toward emptiness, friends, to let go of that relationship, to observe it, to see where there's suffering, and to allow that suffering to resolve, to be released through mindfulness, through awareness. And let's notice when we've managed to let go of even a small degree of suffering, how does that feel? There's an absence. There's a space that opens up. There's a resting. There's something you could call peace or stillness. Appreciate that emptiness. This is the movement toward Nibbana. And we can have a lot of experiences of tastes of emptiness, tastes of Nibbana along the way. Good to notice them. Good to recognize how it was and how it is now. To see progress on the path. Because this encourages us to keep going. This gives us confidence, doesn't it? It gives us great faith in this practice. And more as we practice and experience even a small degree of emptiness, of freedom, of peace, then we're going to want to continue in this direction. It's an unmistakable experience, the experience of letting go of suffering, isn't it? We know it's good. We know it's beneficial. Beneficial here, beneficial everywhere. And so this encouragement, this inspiration, when we consider the Buddha's teachings on emptiness, and it's really something I would like to recommend today, to have a look in the chat at the references that I put and read and take in and contemplate these teachings on emptiness, where the flavor is, very much, it's practical. It's very much the advice to seek what's good for you, seek what's helpful, seek seclusion, seek simplification, letting go of having too much, doing too much, talking too much, acquiring things. It's not that we have to stop all of those things, but the encouragement is there to notice the absence of all those things. How does it feel? And is there a sense then of quite naturally wanting to incline towards more peaceful abidings? First, the conditions around us, to choose, to create, to enable a quieter place, less going on, maybe away from other people or with other people who have the same inclination towards silence, meditation, cultivation. First, to, enable the surroundings to be such, and then to begin to do the work here where we're investigating this crowd, this city, this complexity, all the proliferation that's happening here, all the imagining, all the creating. We start to see how we're operating from habit, where we have a karmic flow, a flow of experience that compels us to behave and think and operate in certain ways. And slowly but surely we can notice how putting ourselves in the right situation, taking up the Buddha's teachings and meditating, developing mindfulness will quite naturally incline us towards emptiness, towards peace, towards stillness. And it's just such a beautiful process, and it's such a wholesome, virtuous blessing for the world. Because a peaceful heart naturally inclines towards harmlessness. We've stopped harming ourselves, friends. When we practice for liberation, we're actually helping ourselves. We're supporting the good. We're enabling a flowering of the true potential here, the mind that is radiant, the mind that is peaceful, the mind that's not creating. And when we begin to let go of all the proliferation, we really do start to simply be present. And so we can take the meditation, all the encouragement to develop mindfulness, bring it into every moment of our lives and see how there's a falling away of complexity and a clear seeing. And we can just notice how the world will change around us. The mind is like a mirror of the world. All things are interconnected. And so when we work to release the pain and suffering here, release the defilements of greed, hatred, and delusion here, then we are literally changing the world. That has a tremendous impact. There is no separation in this realm, and so peace here means there's an outflowing of peacefulness. The emptiness here is a reflection of the emptiness around us. And so I'd like to encourage, all of us to consider emptiness, consider sunyata, to see the emptiness, to notice the space in which objects arise, to have a mind that's not proliferating and creating anymore, but rather in seeing there's only seeing, in hearing there's just the sound, the smell, the taste, the touch, the thought. Thoughts arise and thoughts pass away. We don't need to do anything with them. They're not ours. They're simply a flow of Dhamma. And so we can be like a empty vessel, empty space, peaceful space. And into this space, you can throw anything and it doesn't land. It's like the simile the Buddha gave for the consciousness that is no longer defiled, that is no longer tainted by reactivity, by greed, hatred, or delusion. It's like a beam of light, shining through a window. Where does the beam of light land? Perhaps on the floor? Well, there is no floor. Perhaps on the walls, the far wall. There is no wall. What if there is no floor and there is no wall? Where does the beam of light land? Of course, it lands nowhere. So we can be, as we cultivate emptiness, we can be such a safe and peaceful and enlightening presence in the world, where whatever comes our way doesn't land, doesn't create any ripples. There's not a reaction. And this is something to consider. It's not that we're going to experience that all the time, but it's a way of considering that can enable us when we do react, when we do lean in towards experience or want to get away from experience or find that we're, emotionally getting involved and thinking a lot about things that are happening and wanting to involve ourselves and sort things out and understand in these ways. We can notice that and we can be willing to again come home, again breathe deep, again rest the attention in the body, be kind to ourselves, be harmless, be helpful, be with the experience and just let it be. And when we do this, There's the emptiness. There's not any more creating. There's not any more reacting. We can do this, and we can do it again and again. When there's heat, when there's reactivity, you know, when we notice we're suffering, then again and again we can remember to come home. And this cultivation of mindfulness is a cultivation of kindness. It's a cultivation of goodness and a cultivation of peace. And it's something we surely are developing. And this taste of peace, this taste of the emptiness, the freedom from defilements, the freedom from selfing, the freedom of controlling, trying to control, the freedom from reactivity. We can really focus on this, you know, make much of it, friends, and keep cultivating the same. So these are a few words around emptiness, and I hope that they can be helpful for you. And please make note of the references, the various suttas that I'd like to recommend for this week, to have a look at them and to contemplate them for yourselves. There's so much more. This Dharma is rich, profound, vast, like an ocean. So for each one of us, we want to dive into that ocean and just keep learning from everything. So I hope those readings will be helpful. Ayya. Thank you for your patient listening. I'm going to have a look in the chat. Thanks for your greetings, everyone. Good morning to you all. Those in the UK, that is. No, that is the you are. Somebody saying good morning from the UK. It's actually the afternoon now, but good morning to those in the US. Whatever time of day it is for you, a very good day to you. Yeah, hi Madeline, a local. Anthony says, so, thanks Anthony. So you should train like this. When discourse is spoken by the realized one, deep, profound, transcendent, dealing with emptiness, are being recited, we will want to listen. That's beautiful. Anthony, thank you. Yes, absolutely. Friends, we are so blessed, aren't we? We have discourses, plenty of discourses, hundreds and hundreds of discourses from the Buddha. And of course, you know, 2,500 years have gone by. And even if they hadn't, the Buddha himself encouraged us, you know, not to take as true anything that we read, anything that we hear, anything that traditions dictate to us, but to have an attitude of openness, of receptivity, and to be willing to investigate the teachings. And I feel that, you know, actually the teachings of the Buddha that have been handed down so faithfully for so long, yes, perhaps there have been some changes over time, but we would seem to have enough really essential, valuable, workable Dharma teachings to really cover all our questions and all our difficulties, and to give us a very clear sense of direction for the path to liberation. How amazing is that? And so personally, I read a sutta every day, at least one, usually more, and always with this attitude. I recommend so much, and I'm sure many of you have this attitude of great respect. So nothing else happening, a real sense of veneration, a real sense of gratitude for this possibility, because this opens the heart, doesn't it? And then we're more present, more available for the teaching. And so to read it, take in the teachings in a meditative way, in a respectful way, to open to them, and then to, having taken in a sutta, any kind of teaching from the Buddha, any kind of spiritual teaching, to then contemplate it. Means to stay present and to allow it to percolate through the mind and body. Give it time, give it space, reflect upon, and allow the teaching to go deeply into the heart, into the bones. This is the way to consider the suttas. I like to keep my books on a high shelf, just like the Buddha Rupas that we may have, we may use as objects for encouragement, inspiration, to remind us of the quality of the Buddha. Also to put these books in a place that is, respectable place, a suitable place, to treat them with great respect and regard. And not to hold to them, and not to necessarily take every word as truth. This too. Thank you, Anthony. Okay. I've got a question here from Bhavani, I think two. Namaste, Ayya. Namaste, Bhavani. Are you living in seclusion? And then Bhavani says, empty from seclusion. It's unbelievable, Ayya. Difficult to believe that, Ayya. Okay, I think I can certainly answer, am I living in seclusion? Yes and no. There are different ways in which we can consider seclusion, right? So there's the seclusion of the body. I live in a pretty secluded way, but I'm living with other people. Then there's the seclusion of the heart, seclusion of the mind. And this is something we can cultivate wherever we are. So we can take in the Buddha's advice to seek places where we can be peaceful, where we can be alone, to develop our practice when possible. But we may not have that opportunity, or we may sometimes have that opportunity, but we may find that our life is actually very busy, lots of people around us, family, colleagues, and so on. Nothing wrong with that. What we can do then is to give ourselves time out when we can for meditation, try and find peaceful places, quiet places to help us to practice, cultivate mindfulness in this way. But also, when we're in the midst of busyness, lots of things going on around us, the human realm, then to see how we can cultivate a sense of stillness, peacefulness, and seclusion in the heart. This quality of viveka, seclusion. And this is through non-reactivity, through mindfulness, through presence. Making that our priority. Can we do that? Can we put that first? Can we be aware, even in the midst of the conversation, even in the midst of the family life? Can we maintain a degree of centeredness? And this is something to cultivate and develop for ourselves, so that we're first and foremost practitioners. First and foremost, we're aware of what's going on, practicing the Dharma, being the Buddha, seeing the Dharma. We can do this. And then the final aspect of seclusion is the seclusion from the defilements. This is the Buddha. This is the Arahant who can dwell in emptiness because there's no reactivity possible anymore. The heart is unshakable. And this degree of solitude, of seclusion, upadi viveka, this is something that we all are working towards. Thank you, Bhavani. And Hema says, oh, thank you, Bonnie. I've just seen another comment from Bhavani. Continuing on, saying, yes, how to be free from empty from defilements. It's unbelievable. Difficult to believe that condition. Please enlighten me. Yeah, just as I was saying, Bhavani, this is the end point of our practice. This is the goal. This is nirvana, to be free from the defilements. And we can see that, yeah, we may not be free from the defilements, and it may feel like an impossibility, but don't allow that thought to take root. Let it go, because it's not an impossibility at all. We know that because the Buddha became the Buddha, and because there have been so many arahants, so many others who have been able to attain this freedom from defilements. So, you know what, Bhavani? If they could do it, we can do it too. And this is not to say it's easy. This is a life practice. It takes everything we've got in the way of energy, commitment, determination, willingness to let go, sustaining and maintaining and really purifying a very virtuous approach to life, harmlessness, non-cruelty, renunciation. Yes, it's not necessarily easy, but it's not impossible. And each one of us has this capacity. Each one of us has the ability to practice for liberation. So we want to rise up, and know that you can also experience freedom from the defilements. So I really wish you well with that, Bhavani, and never say never. Okay, and Hema says, thank you, Hema. Would understanding emptiness cause the feeling of life is meaningless? Thank you. That's a very good question. Thank you for that, Hema. It could, I suppose, if one were to incline towards the sense that if everything is insubstantial, codependently arisen, nothing's real in the sense, there's nothing solid here in any way. All is empty, everything is empty, empty of self, empty of substance. One could maybe start to feel, what's the point? But clearly, we have purpose. We have, in a way, we have this body, we have this mind, we find ourselves alive here. And so what do we do? And then there is this sense of potential, this sense of purpose around how to make it good. And what we can really recognize, I guess, is that when we turn towards a sense of meaninglessness, and it's a kind of aversion in that, a kind of turning away from engaging skillfully with life. And we can just notice what's the result of that. How does that feel? What is that like? How does that incline me to behave, to act, to speak, to live my life? And then we can take in the Buddha's teachings and the Eightfold Path, which begins with speech, action, and livelihood, like how to manifest, how to live, and the encouragement to do the good, avoid harm, purify the heart, speak with care, speak to harmonize, speak to benefit others, otherwise leave speech alone, find work that is benefiting others, that is benefiting oneself, that is of service to the world. So we have this guidance, we have the path of practice, and to incline ourselves in this direction and notice how that feels is to see how one can really make the most of this life, we do have a kind of job to do. We have work to do to see suffering and let go of suffering, to clear up, to clean up, to look at the mess and to tidy up the mess. There is a job to be done. And so that we can really kind of channel our energy and enthusiasm and good intentions, and in this wholesome way, blossom and develop and grow in Dharma. And so to me, it's the teachings on emptiness are more of an encouragement in this way, to give ourselves the best and to be of service to the world, to really serve and help ourselves to practice for liberation. So I hope that's helpful, Hema. Thank you, Anthony, for your kind comment. Thanks, everyone, for your lovely comments and greetings. We're out of time, so I'll very quickly see if I can share a few more comments before we conclude. Rebecca, thank you, says, at this time in history, there's so much emphasis on promoting the individual self, even making oneself into a brand. When I contemplate emptiness of self, it's like cool water pouring over me. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Beautiful. Thank you. Isn't it just so, friends? Japelsin says, thanks, Japelsin. May I then say that your explanation of seclusion also similar to detachment from surrounding? Detachment, seclusion, yeah. It's all, words, isn't it? And it's so difficult to really put into words these teachings. But yes, detachment, seclusion, there are kind of connotations to different words, aren't there? And I think the word detachment can sometimes have a tinge, a connotation of sort of indifference, something like that, not caring or turning away from. And so let's just be really clear that any aspect of turning away through aversion or moving towards through desire, we want to see whether that's arising for us in any moment and to notice that, to be really awake, friends, to the defilements as they arise, and to find our way to freedom from suffering, not through turning away from suffering or avoiding it or dismissing it, but through seeing it, being with it, understanding it. This is how suffering can be released, through wise and loving attention. So thank you for that, and thank you for helping to clarify the meaning. Thanks, Japelsin. And final question before we part, from Hema. Thank you, Hema. How to utilize emptiness to avoid bad memories, reflex, like a big argument. We can be assailed with past experiences and notice how we can react to them again and again, and how painful it is that we can get into these sort of cycles, really traumatic cycles of reliving and resuffering and almost increasing the suffering through not quite being able to let go. And so I really appreciate this question, Hema, because if we are assailed with memories of some painful happening, let's notice, let's try to, the memory comes up, try to really attend to what's happening in the body. How is the breath? How does it feel? To embody the experience is often what's needed in order to be able to fully live it, to fully attend to it. And that's needed in order to be able to let go. So when we have thoughts and memories coming up again and again, trying to come home to this body, this moment, this experience right now, and see what's happening. This is often a way in which we can just slowly but surely, we can whittle away at some complex, some sankhara, some trauma, or some, difficult memory that's lodged in the heart. We can whittle away at it very gradually. If each time it arises for us, we attend to this moment, what's happening now, what is the reactivity right now, and when we can embody and really dwell with that feeling of how it is, then a little bit more whittling has happened and we're freeing up gradually. And slowly but surely, difficult memories will, find their place of rest and no longer need to manifest because they've been released. Peace, emptiness, the absence of, we can then experience that. So thank you very much, friends, for your kind attention. And I'd like to conclude with 3 sadhus in respect for our great teacher, the Buddha. Sadhu, 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 anumodami. And just to say, I'm not here next week. I'm teaching over in Ireland, but I'll be back the following week. Thanks, everyone. All good wishes.